guys, welcome back. So now we're talking about, we talked about the leg yield and we gave you a bunch of different exercises in that. We talked about the shoulder in, we gave you a bunch of exercises in that and how to do that. And now we're going to talk about the haunches in, because the haunches in is the next thing. So that's something that you start doing at second level and that you end up working on whenever you're working on engagement and in suppleness of the lumbar region. So that's the one aspect of the haunches in. If you have a horse that has some tightness in the lumbar, the haunches in and the haunches out can be very, very helpful. So we're going to talk about the haunches in because the haunches out would be the exact same thing. It would just be bent in the other direction. Okay, but we're going to talk about the haunches in. So let me bring him around so he's facing on the rail again. And we'll talk about the positioning for the haunches. So when we go, so you're down the rail, you're going on the rail, you're going straight. When you go to do the haunches in, you actually are bringing, please do not back up, please. You're going to bring the haunches in. Okay, so the haunches are going to be so that you're on 3 tracks now for a different reason than you were on 3 tracks when the shoulder 4. So now you're lining up the outside hind with the inside shoulder. So your 3 tracks are actually 1 track for the outside front leg, 1 track for the inside front leg and the outside hind leg, and then 1 track for the inside hind leg. Okay? So what are the problems that I see in the haunches in? So a couple problems. I see where the haunches are too much in and you've got too much bend. And now I'm on 4 tracks, okay? So I've got a track for the inside, for the outside front, the outside hind, and the inside hind. I'm on 4 tracks. So that's actually too much bend. And so you see that. You also see where there's actually too much bend in the neck. So you get kind of this kinked look and you get to where someone is sitting to the outside, right? So we'll talk about that differently because they're 2 different problems. One, you can have them too bent. The other problem is that you can be, I'm trying to come up a little bit closer to the, he's like, you're moving my body all around. If you're sitting to the outside trying to drive, you'll see this, and they're sitting over there trying to drive the haunches to the inside, okay? And they're sitting on the outside, driving the haunches to the inside. And that is an error also. You're not trying to drive the haunches to the inside. I will tell you how to maneuver your body in a second for the haunches in. And the other thing that you see is lack of angle. So you'll have a horse that'll come through the turn and then they'll kind of be like this, and this really isn't haunches in, okay? And then the judge is going to say not enough angle. The haunches in basically helps you lead to the half pass, and you want to have this control of the haunches because you don't want to lead with the haunches in the half pass, nor do you want them to be dragging behind the activity that you're doing. So this haunches in is a precursor to the half pass. It's also a precursor to some exercises in the canter to start to introduce a little bit more engagement and a little more separation of the hind legs before the pirouette work. So when you come through the turn, let's try and do this in the walk. Sorry, bud, we're like all over the place with you today. All right, so you're going to come out of your short side. You're going to do your nice little turn with your engagement of the inside hind, okay? And then you're going to come straight, and then you're going to ask for the haunches to come in. You want the horse to be bent around the inside leg. You want your body to be maintaining position. You want to have your connection on your outside rein and your inside rein. And you want them to be marching forward toward the bit. Again, easier. It's a great way to introduce the haunches in, but it's almost easier to do in the trot and the canter once you teach it. So let's talk about the body positioning. My body positioning is I'm still heading straight down the long side. Okay, my body is heading straight down the long side. What I have is my inside leg is at the girth or in its normal position, hanging down, okay? And that is, and my inside seat bone is on, not digging into them, but it's on, so that I have a place to bend them around. Now my outside leg is gonna come slightly back. What that does is it brings my outside seat bone around to about 7 o'clock. So that if I'm sitting on that clock face, my outside seat bone is coming back and closer to the horse's spine. That with my outside leg back is what signals to the horse to come around and have their haunches come to the inside. Now, what I don't want to do is have their haunches, he's looking at something. I don't want to have their haunches come to the inside without the bend. So I've got to have my inside seat bone and my inside part of my body as like the place that they're bending around. I don't like a pole because that sounds like very fixed, and we're never fixed, we're always moving. But it's like I want them to bend around the inside leg, and my outside seat bone and my outside leg are initiating the haunches to come around the spot that I've asked them to bend around. Okay, so let's see if we can demonstrate that in the trot, and we'll also demonstrate that in the canter. And the haunches in, sometimes if you have a horse that has got a lot of lumbar fixation and they're very tight in their lumbar, the haunches in can be a really good exercise for them. But I do not do a lot of stuff that makes them swing their haunches around. So while I use the haunches in as an exercise, I'm not going to do things like I did in the leg yield where I'm like haunches out, now haunches in, now haunches out, now haunches in. Like I do not want to teach them to swing their haunches around a lot. I really want to teach them to channel their hind leg to step up in under their center of gravity. And so I caution you with using it as a huge suppling exercise. That's not really what it's for. That's what the shoulder in and the leg yield are. And that we're using haunches in more as an ability to control the haunches better. As one, we have to do haunches in our test, but two, as the setup for having more control of the haunches as we go into other exercises above and beyond third level. So I'm going to come around my corner, I'm going to head straight, and now I'm going to bring the haunches to the inside. There's not an overbend of his neck, and then I'm going to straighten before I hit the turn, okay? So I don't want to come into the turn with the haunches in. I'm going to straighten and put his haunches back onto the rail, and then I'm going to go around the turn, okay? Okay guys, so that is then the haunches in at the canter, okay? So that's the way that you can practice all three of them in the gaits. So we'll talk in the future about the half pass. That will be the fourth one that we talk about, and how we turn the haunches in into the idea of a half pass. And we'll use that on our next horse, and we'll see you in the next video.